Welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this next interview. U.S. President Donald Trump's second state visit to the United Kingdom has reignited questions around the future of transatlantic relations. From royal pageantry to multi-billion-dollar tech deals, the visit blends symbolism with strategic interests, especially in AI, energy, and defense. Yet it also comes amid protests, global tensions, and shifting alliances across Europe and beyond. Joining us today on TVP World to unpack the deeper implications is Karin von Hippel, Distinguished Fellow at RUSI, a leading expert on international security and transatlantic policy, former Chief of Staff at the U.S. State Department under the Obama administration. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Thank you for having me.
So what does this second state visit signal about UK's diplomatic priorities, and how unusual is it for this kind of reception for a sitting US president?
It's certainly unusual, as you said, for a U.S. president to have two state visits, since, from the first administration to the second. It's unusual for the Brits to request something, but I think it was a smart thing to do. I don't see it as being overly solicitous to Donald Trump, but I see it as a smart move to try to cement the relationship. And don't forget that I think Keir Starmer is also acting on behalf of other allies, including Poland. So I think there's a lot of collaboration and a lot of conversations going on behind the scenes between allied leaders to make sure they're speaking with one voice when they meet with him.
Right, and the two countries just announced a 42 billion euro tech prosperity deal. Is this a turning point for transatlantic tech cooperation, or do you think this leans more on the side of optics?
It's really hard to say because the Trump administration often implements these types of policies and then doesn't follow up with related policies that would be part of the same strategy. And so it's a bit too early to say. Let's hope that it leads to greater cooperation, not just with the UK, but with other countries in Europe, because it's really important that allies are on the same page, that they're working together to deal with critical challenges. And of course, advanced technology is important, not just for commerce, but also for our combined defense.
Right, but we're also seeing a lot of money flowing from U.S. tech and financial firms. Do you think there's also a risk for the UK to be a little bit over dependent, especially with the post-Brexit regulatory kind of divergences?
Yeah, there'll be concerns about that, about what kind of demands the American companies and the American government have made on the UK. We do not have a lot of transparency about that now. Expect more questions to the Prime Minister in the UK over the coming days about exactly what is involved with these deals. But generally, I think investment by advanced technology can only lead to better innovation, more advances, let's just say more research and development. So I do think it's a good thing for this country. There is a lot of expertise, but they lack a lot of funding and infrastructure. And I think that these investments should help with that.
Right. Now on to a little bit more kind of sensitive or perhaps slightly controversial topic. We do see like a very warm reception by the UK government to Trump's visit, but at the same time, we're also seeing protests and, well, sort of political baggage surround Trump's visit. Do you think these public opposition might limit the UK government's ability to deepen ties in actual practice?
I don't think so. I mean, it was far worse the last time around, if you recall. We have had protests in London today, but Trump is not going to London. He's going to be in Windsor, and then he's going to Chequers for another meeting, I think, tomorrow. So, the last time around, certainly he would have seen the protests, but I think he doesn't mind that. I think he quite likes exciting his base, and his base often gets excited when opposition goes out in the streets. I think also it's been a bit of a damp squid this time. I just think people are tired of it. They're thinking other things need to happen. If they want to push back on Donald Trump, it's not necessarily protests that matter. And so I don't think people care as much this time. The last time around, I was here in London when he came, and it was quite chaotic, and there was a lot of press coverage, et cetera. This time around, I don't think people are as interested. They kind of been there, they've done that.
Now, one of the big topics that was touched upon is also, Trump once again sort of lambasted years over dependence on Russian energy. And of course, there's also discussion about this 19 sanction package on Europe kind of phasing out Russian energy. How significant do you think that is? And in practice, can you see that materializing anytime soon, seeing that it has been sort of a weak spot when it comes to European sanction regime?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question. And it's hard for me to tell if Trump is actually serious about it, because, of course, as you say, the Europeans shouldn't be buying any Russian oil at all. We know it's mostly Hungary and Slovakia within the EU, of course, Turkey as well. And he mentioned NATO more than the EU. On the other hand, it's not clear to me that Trump would follow through if everyone agreed to all of his demands, because he keeps moving the goalposts. He hasn't really applied any sanctions himself on Russia. He's held back on pushing China, even though he wants other countries to be pushing China. The only country that the Americans so far have slapped pretty big tariffs on is India. And of course, all that's done is driven India much more into the China, Russia, Iran, North Korea embrace. And that's not really what the United States, it's not in the United States' interest to do that to India, nor is it in the interest of the Europeans, who are also trying to forge a trade deal with India right now. So it's a little bit complicated, and it's not clear to me how sincere Donald Trump is about implementing what he's pushing other people to do.
All right, so with that being said, do you think that this might hinder the willingness for European countries to also follow through? Like you mentioned, Hungary and Slovakia, well, they have been relatively firm on their stance not to phase out Russian energy, but it does seem like a country like Poland, for example, not only are they kind of pledging to phase out Russian energy, we're also talking about moving up the timeline as well. Where does this divergence come from? And do you think Europe actually do have the capability to diversify?
Europe could do more. It's also not clear to me that Trump isn't trying to push these countries to buy more from the United States, right? I mean, he's also trying to sell American energy to Europe. I think if he really wants Hungary and Slovakia to stop buying Russian energy, he could call up the leaders. He has a pretty good relationship with both those leaders. Turkey is also a significant purchaser of Russian energy as well. And he also has a good relationship with Erdoğan. So, if he is serious about it, he can make a greater effort behind the scene to push those countries to stop purchasing Russian oil. I would like to think he's serious about ending the war in Ukraine. I think we all want to end the war in Ukraine. I think you and Poland feel it probably more than almost any other country. And I think the Polish prime minister and foreign minister have been showing significant leadership in pushing back and in trying to bring other countries together to do the right thing in supporting Ukraine.
Right, and speaking of the war on security issues, how might this trip reshape defense collaboration, especially in areas like AI-enabled military system, nuclear energy? Do you think that this might actually be able to push kind of defense cooperation to the next level?
Hard to say. I mean, the United States under Donald Trump says one thing one day and then moves on to something else the other day. What I'm hoping is that the Europeans, along with like-minded countries like South Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, come together along with Canada and really think through how they would develop their own defense with or without the United States. I think the United States has shown itself not to be a fully reliable ally under this president. And so all of these countries need to think more carefully. If we increase to 5%, what does that mean in practice? What kind of skills or what kind of efficiencies can we build so we all don't do the exact same thing? How can we collaborate better and come to each other's aid? So there's a lot of discussion that needs to happen with or without the United States, but I wouldn't see the U.S. as pivotal in this because we just don't see them as a reliable ally right now.
All right, so like I mentioned, there's still a lot of kind of detail that needed to be ironed out. But at the same time, how do you see European allies interpreting this show of bilateral closeness? Do you find that reassuring for NATO, or does it look like it's more isolating for Europe?
I think it's better for NATO. I think that the more countries that have a good relationship with the United States, the better it is, because they can help each other out if they need to. I think Keir Starmer has developed quite a strong relationship, a friendship even with Donald Trump, which many people are surprised about. They come from different political parties. But other countries also have a good relationship with him within the EU, and they range from the right or the right of center parties in Italy and places like Hungary. Through to more centrist politicians. He doesn't have a great relationship with all European leaders, and so I think it does help with those countries that we've seen really are making quite an effort. I mean, I think in that meeting in the White House, when everyone flew over to meet with Zelensky, in a way, it was like an intervention to support Zelensky on Ukraine. I think Donald Trump was quite happy to see all of those people, and he's building a stronger relationship, including with Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO.
Right, you just brought up something interesting that I want to pick your brains on because, like I mentioned, Keir Starmer and Trump doesn't really share the same base political leanings and the such. Do you think that this disconnect and how warmly he's being welcomed in the country might actually rub his own voter base the wrong way?
Donald Trump's voter base? No. I mean, Donald Trump's base pretty much sticks to him no matter what. The only thing we've seen so far where they've separated a bit from him is over this Epstein affair. And we still are waiting for the press conference a little later this evening, when I'm sure some of the journalists will ask not only about Donald Trump's relationship with Epstein, but of course, Peter Mandelson, the former the British ambassador to the United States who had to step down or who was fired because of that relationship. So that's still going to be a thorn, but I don't know if that's really the only thing that I've seen that has made his base get upset. Pretty much anything else he does, they just follow along and they justify it. They often contort themselves into pretzels trying to justify it because he's sometimes not consistent with previous actions or previous things that he has said.
What about the other way around? We've seen protests on the streets of London, and of course, a lot of people do see Trump as a more thorny figure. Do you think that his warm reception by the UK government would, turn some people against Starmer?
I mean, certainly there will be people in Starmer's party who are not happy about this warm embrace, about the expense spent on this visit, about giving him 2 state visits, or it's a very big deal. On the other hand, I think most Brits realize that it's important to have a good relationship with the United States. And I think that they're pleased that they have something so special in the royal family, and something that, not just Donald Trump, but many other leaders all over the world really appreciate, that kind of reception that you do get when you go to Buckingham Palace or Windsor and get that kind of all the formalities with the horse-drawn carriage and the pomp that the Brits are so good at. So I do think the Brits are probably quite proud of that they have something that is so unique.
Right. So we'll have to see how the bilateral relationship develop after this. But in the meantime, thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it. And thanks for being with us on TVP World.
Thanks. Cheers. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for tuning into this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.